This morning, our first reading comes to us from 1 Samuel 16, verses 1 through 13. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you grieve over Saul? I have rejected him from being king over Israel. Fill your horn with oil and set out. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided for myself a king among his sons." And Samuel said, "How can I go? If Saul hears of it, he will kill me." And the Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, 'I have come to sacrifice to the Lord.' Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what you shall do. And you shall anoint for me the one whom I named you." Samuel did what the Lord commanded and came to Bethlehem. The elders of the city came to meet him, trembling, and said, "Do you come peaceably?" He said, "Peaceably. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Sanctify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." And he sanctified Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they came, he looked on Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed is now before the Lord." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him." For the Lord does not see as mortals see. They look on the outward appearance. The Lord looks on the heart. Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel. He said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Then Jesse made Shammah pass by. He said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, and Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen any of these." Samuel said to Jesse, "Are all your sons here?" Jesse said, "Well, there remains yet the youngest, but he is keeping the sheep." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and bring him, for we will not sit down until he comes here." He sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. The Lord said, "Rise and anoint him, for this is the one." Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon David from that day forward. Samuel then set out and went to Ramah. Our second reading comes to us from the Gospel of John, chapter 9, verses 1 through 41. As Jesus walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" And Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. Then he went and washed and came back able to see. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" And some were saying, "It is he." Others were saying, "No, but it is someone like him." And he kept saying, "I am the man." But they kept asking him, "Then how are your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' Then I went and washed and received my sight." And they said to him, "Where is he?" And said, "I do not know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, "He put mud on my eyes that I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner perform these signs?" And they were divided. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." The man said, "He is a prophet." The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but we don't know how it is that he now sees, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said that because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders, for the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." So for the second time, they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "I do not know whether he is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become one of his disciples?" Then they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciples, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we don't know where he comes from." The man answered, "Here is an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born entirely in sins, and are you trying to teach us?" And they drove him out. Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" And he answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me so that I may believe in him." And Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." The man said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshipped him. And Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees near him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would not have sinned, but now that you say we see, your sin remains." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Are you able to see what is right in front of you? Take a look at the image up on the screen. It's what they call a magic eye illusion. Now, when you first look at it, what's the first thing you think you see? Trees. First thing you see is trees. Ah, you think you see a fish? Oh, okay. Can you see anything else there? You might take a while to look and see. You might see the trees first, of course, but if you stare long enough, you might notice the fish thing actually has wings. You see it a little? It should be birds. If eventually you should see birds that you stare at a while. Now, that's what this magic eye thing does. And you may have come across them before in the past. If you haven't, the trick is you're supposed to stare at it and let your eyes kind of get lazy or start to relax a little bit so that you stare beyond the picture. And just as you start to stare beyond the picture, then the image starts to come out. Now, don't be frustrated if you can't see it. I remember back in the 1990s when this stuff first came out, there were a number of years that went by. Every time I saw something like this, I said, I'm not going to spend any time on this. I can't see the darn Tyrannosaurus Rex or the truck or the smiley face or whatever it is that's supposed to be up there. And I'd always march off. But then one day a friend of mine showed me how to do it, and I determined that I would work until I saw what was up there. Now, this exercise is all about how you focus your eyes. And there may be many variables that affect your ability to see. It could be the angle that you are sitting in the room. It could be how far or close you are to the image. It may be that the room isn't well lit enough, or that you yourself aren't wanting to take the time to bother with it. There are a number of reasons why you may not see what is up there. But the interesting thing is that most of the obstacles that prevent us from seeing what is hidden up there are matters that we can fix ourselves. They're matters in terms of whether we choose to sit in the right space, or if we take the time and look at it in just the right way. There are things that we can do to improve our ability to see what is there. Sadly, we have to move on, and I won't leave the picture up there for much longer. So if you can't see it, don't worry. I have copies of it on my computer, and you can always say to me, I want to see that picture again and see what's behind those trees. Because the next question I have is there more to the picture than what you see? Now, in this image, at first glance, you think it's some guy jumping over a chasm. You might ask yourself, is he going to make it? Is he going to fall? Is he going to plummet? Then you look a little bit closer, you study the background and what's going on, and you might discover, oh, hey, wait a minute. That's just a really cool chalk drawing. The picture taken at an angle where the man is jumping over solid ground, but it looks like it's a chasm. You see, even in this situation, we don't necessarily see what is obvious. It doesn't always take an illusion to make things difficult to see. It isn't always an illusion before us that clouds our ability to see the truth. In that Old Testament story, where Samuel came along to anoint a new king, God brought before him the family of Jesse. And God said to Samuel, somewhere in this family of Jesse is going to be a new king. And then they started bringing out the sons. And they looked tall, handsome, strong. They looked like they were kingly material. And as Samuel thought about which one he would anoint, God said, not this one, not that one, and not that one either. Eventually, Samuel was a little bit confused, and he asked for Jesse to come back and say, Jesse, you've shown me all your sons, haven't you? Jesse said, well, there is David, but he's just a boy, and he's out with the sheep. We're told that he came in, and he had bright cheeks, was a little boy. He had those red cheeks from being out in the wind, probably soft skin, hasn't had his beard come in yet. We know later on in the story that he is a small boy because he tries on some armor and it all falls right off of him. He looks funny when he wears it. No, David's just a boy and he's just a shepherd. Even Jesse, his own father, said, well, yeah, but it's just David. But God said, no, this is the one I want. I see into his heart. You look on the outside, you see all of these other attributes, and you think that is what matters, but I look at what is going on the inside, and that's what really matters. And so it wasn't even just really an illusion so much as it was just an inability or an unwillingness to see what was beyond the surface. God's focus was on something deeper, and we are told in the story that the people were at least open to trusting God's vision and allowing David to be anointed the next king and putting David in positions over time that would enable him to be king of Israel someday. But in the New Testament story, we see something else. We see religious leaders who refused to accept what didn't conform to their worldview, and as such, they couldn't see the obvious. For them, they had a lifetime in which they were dedicated to looking at spiritual realities beyond the physical realm. And you would think that of anybody who could do that, it would be a spiritual leader, a religious leader, who could say, aha, I see what's going on, despite what it appears to be on the outside. But strangely enough, these leaders of God, these people who were devoted to the religious life, could not see beyond their own expectations. And so we have this funny story, really, of Jesus who comes in and he heals a man who is literally blind. And after healing him, the guys who can see all go around unable to see what happened. And the joke really is, in the end, though it doesn't start out as a joke, but it comes out to be one, that the guy who was blind could see, and the guys who could see were blind. Jesus, God with us, reached down to heal this man. And he saw, for the first time, not just what was going on in front of his eyes, but what was going on spiritually. And unfortunately, those who had been the spiritual leaders saw nothing. Even today, we struggle to look beyond what we expect to see. The illusions that we saw on the screen up here were things that maybe played with the tricks of our eyes, but it doesn't even take that. Sometimes we look at someone and we say, oh, I've made up my mind on them right away, or we go into a situation and we decide, oh, okay, I've made up my mind. That's it. We are told that it's just natural in some ways. People who come and visit churches know within 30 seconds of being there whether they like being there or not. People, when you meet them for the first time, usually make an impression. And you know in your mind whether you want to continue being a friend with this person or whether you're just grateful this is a quick meeting and maybe you'll never see them again. We have those feelings. There was, of course, a reality behind all of that. There was a pastor of a church that I heard about. Maybe you've heard this story too. He was new to this congregation, hadn't met the people really yet. And one Sunday, it was going to be his first Sunday there, and he was going to go and preach. And everybody was excited. The next thing you know, as people were coming into church that day, there was this guy laying in front of the church door. He had on dirty clothes, and he stank to high heaven. And they thought he was drunk, and they were trying to get rid of him because, you know, this is the day the new pastor's coming. We don't want people like you sitting around here. Well, as the day went on, the service started. People were shocked to find that when it came time for the sermon, the guy in the dirty, tattered rags stood up in the back, walked up, took off his dirty coat and hat. He said, "Greetings, my name is Reverend so-and-so, and I'm your new pastor." There was also another story of a Christmas time that someone was in the pews sleeping. And he was dirty, and he had on this big old coat. He wrapped around himself, and in the middle of the Christmas Eve service, he started snoring. And as they went through the worship service, they let him sleep. And at the end of the service, as people left, they walked by him. And he continued sleeping. And the pastor finally went up to him after the last person left and tapped him. The man woke up, and he woke up and he realized that people had put dollar bills and money all over around him to give him something for a meal or a night somewhere. And as the story turned out, he wasn't actually a homeless man at that point at all. He was actually a firefighter who had been working a very long few hours, and he was exhausted, but he still wanted to come to church. And there he slept. And with the pastor, he talked about what they could do with the money for the church to help someone else. But you see, we see and we make assumptions. Look at the picture of this church. This is one of the congregations that I visited during my sabbatical last fall. This is a little church that is up in Wisconsin. And when you look at it, what do you see? What do you see just from that picture there? What's that? What? You see anything? Do you see anything? It's well kept. Absolutely. It's well kept. Anything else? It's one of those buildings you might say is unassuming, maybe. You go through all these little towns, and they all have these little churches. Sometimes they're brick, sometimes they're wood frame. You can tell it's a tidy little church. They keep it up well. So obviously there's somebody physically taking care of the place. But it's just a church, right? Or a church building. It's a church. But the building doesn't really tell the story. You see, that's the thing. A lot of times we think of church and we think of that building or we think of that structure. But that's really not what's up there. That's just the building, of course. But the building holds so much more. This is a congregation that devoted itself to mission. Mission like you cannot believe. People going into South America and coming back with stories about spiders that were huge, and enduring those all the time they're down there building a house for someone, or putting in wells for people who don't have fresh water. This is a little church up in Wisconsin, no bigger than us, 150 members about. And they have people that go out and do mission all the time. When you look at the building, you don't see much. You just see a place where people maybe come to gather and worship on Sundays. But the real story goes on with the people who are there. And not even so much what they do in that building, but what they do when they're outside of that building, when they're gone. They build houses, they put in wells, they clean up streets. They go to neighbors who are sick and bring them food. They serve. Their mission is beyond that building. And that is an invitation to see what is more than what meets the eye. What do you see when you look at this photo? This one should look far familiar. What's that? That's a beautiful one? Yeah, a beautiful one. Yeah. Anybody recognize that church? It's our church. It's our church building. You bet. And what do you see when you look at our church building? I see it's pretty well couched, too. Well, what were you saying? It is a massive and large building, yes. This is true. It's a lovely building. But look beyond it for a moment. And what do you see? Is it just a building? Is it just a place where we gather to worship? Pardon? It is taken care of, yeah, just like the other one was well maintained. But do you see beyond the building? Do you see the people? Do images of people come to your mind? And what do they do? What do they say? Do you see anything in there that says, this is a place where God is rightly worshipped and where people are served? Here's the trick. As members of this congregation, as people who attend this church, what we want to do is we want to invite people to see beyond the building itself and to understand what goes on outside of it. Just as I presented the other church to you as a place where they go out and they do mission all over the place because that is their calling, that is the story that people tell more than they do the building. What can we do to let people see more than our structure? Can they see what we do to serve the world? Can they see what we do to build up hope in the midst of hopelessness? Can this be the image of a story of relationships with God and with people? Can this be the image that says, when I look here, I see God's people at work? My running joke has always been that every time I say to someone that I'm the pastor of Presbyterian Church, and they ask, which one is that? And then I have to reply, that's the one that's across the street from Family Video. My dream is that someday someone will ask, Family Video, where's that? And the answer will be, they're across the street from those Presbyterians. Wouldn't that be great? look to say, where is God calling us? What does God see about us, individually and together, that can be something more than what is presently visible? When we look with Christ's eyes and go forward, our help or our hope is to help people out there to see that we are more than what meets the eye. And I think we can do it. Because if we follow Jesus Christ, if we truly commit ourselves to Him, we can't do anything else. If we truly devote ourselves to Him, eventually others will see Him too.